on today's StoryBeat.
Criticism can be a real help. Not always, but if it's helpful criticism, who says it, what they say, and where I like to take that criticism.
This is StoryBeat with Steve Cuden, a podcast for the creative mind. StoryBeat explores how masters of creativity develop and produce brilliant works that people everywhere love and admire. So join us as we discover how talented creators find success in the worlds of imagination and entertainment. Here now is your host, Steve Cuden.
Thanks for joining us on StoryBeat. We're coming to you from the Steel City, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. My guest today, Gabby Gruen, is joining me for the second time on StoryBeat. Gabby has been a writer and producer of ads and commercials for several top-tier ad agencies and their high-profile clients. As a screenwriter, Gabby's sold work to Fox 2000 Films and wrote movie scripts on assignment for a number of independent production companies. More recently, he's been publishing novels. We chatted about his excellent first book, The Uniform, a Holocaust thriller, during his first time on this show. I found The Uniform to be an intense page-turner with real heart and wit. Gabby's next book, The Ride of a Lifetime, a crime novel, is set on the frozen streets of Detroit. I've read The Ride of a Lifetime and can tell you it's a gritty trip through the criminal underbelly of the Motor City. If you like urban noir thrillers, I'm certain you'll enjoy The Ride of a Lifetime. For more about Gabby and his writing, please go to ggruen.com. And now it's a great pleasure to have Gabby Gruen join me today for the second time on StoryBeat. Gabby, welcome back to the show.
Hiya, Steve. Thank you.
Well, it's a great pleasure to see you. It appears you've been very busy since we last spoke. How many books do you currently have in the works?
So I am working on a third novel. I actually had to stop for a while because I spilled a cappuccino on my keyboard and, and lost my third novel.
You lost the novel?
Yeah, I made the mistake of trading in my laptop so I could get a Costco discount, and didn't realize that if you don't have the hard drive, the files are totally gone.
Oh my goodness!
So I had to start fresh, and I needed to, because the third story is a tribute to my mother about her Holocaust survival.
Did you find it to be helpful that you had to start over then?
A little bit, because I had the outline in my head, and I'm not sure how to put this, but there's something about approaching a work for multiple times that sort of fills in stuff for you.
Yeah, you're dredging up things you didn't think about during the first pass, which is why rewriting is so valuable.
That's right.
And so I find it frustrating because sometimes I think that I've done really good work on that first pass, but always the first pass is never good for me. It's the multiple extra passes that always make things better.
Yes, so you're giving it a second look. You're able to see where it needs help.
Exactly. So, you spent years in the advertising industry. We talked about that a bit in the last show that we did. I'm just wondering if you think that your years in advertising has had an influence over the way that you think about telling stories and the way that you create, whether it's a screenplay or a novel. Do you think that your work in the advertising industry was useful to you in doing this work now?
I do, for a couple of reasons. One is that in the advertising business, every assignment you get offers you a problem. So you're there to solve that problem. And so that's a helpful way to think about things.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if you're writing a screenplay or novel, you can say to yourself, what do I want to happen here? What was wrong with my first draft? Where can I bump this up?
And so you're always solving problems in storytelling. If you're writing anything decent at all, it's full of problems.
Always.
Yes. I mean, that's just the constant. So anybody that's listening to this out there, know that if you think you're having problems with your story, then you're a writer, because that's what it is.
Yeah. It's great to pose that for yourself, as a big problem.
Do you think that all of your years of writing combined, because you've been at this for a number of years now, including the ad agencies, and working on screenplays and novels. Do you think that you've gotten better as a writer over time? In what ways?
Well, I can look at it from several different angles now. I mean, I'm not just struggling to come up with a plot. I think about things in terms of plot, in terms of theme, in terms of story, and in terms of character. I was just looking at the novel we're going to talk about today,
Ride of a lifetime?
The Ride of a Lifetime. And the thing that I was really happy about is looking at the narrator, how the narrator tells the story. And it's so entertaining to me. He's like the voice of the characters.
Well, yes, we're going to talk more about Ride of a Lifetime shortly. I want to talk to you first about some of your process and how you go through things. I know in our first time together, you mentioned that you started out early as a gag writer for comedians like Willie Tyler and Lester. Um, do you think that writing gags and jokes and writing for stand-up comedians and that kind of work is helpful to the way that you think about writing sentences? In other words, when you tell a joke, typically you want to be clear, concise, and to the point. Do you think that that has helped you in terms of forming the way that you write now?
Yeah, because it is in its way its own problem. So you approach it that way, that you have to solve the problem. It puts a limit on your thought process.
And jokes share a similar, or correct me if I'm wrong, a similar construction to short advertisement, don't they? Where you have to get in, get out in a very short period of time.
Yes, absolutely.
I think that's the most difficult form of writing of all, is writing short, whether it's a concise line, a joke, whether it's an advertisement, a 30-second ad. I think those are probably incredibly difficult to get right.
There's a wonderful South American writer. His name escapes me now, but he wrote a letter to a friend about his last letter. And he said, "I apologize because I didn't have time to shorten it."
That story is sometimes attributed to Abraham Lincoln. Did you know that?
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, I think it's mentioned that way, and maybe they just made it up, but I'm pretty sure they told that, or they went through that in the movie Lincoln, the Spielberg movie Lincoln with Daniel Day-Lewis.
Oh, yeah. I think it was Jorge something. I think he's an Argentinian writer known for his short stories.
Jorge Luis Borges?
That's it. Borges, yes.
Borges, yes. I'm sure I'm pronouncing it wrong, and I apologize for that. But yeah, I mean, I'm sure he probably picked up on that, and he said it too. It's a really great way to think. It's easy to write and overwrite. It's harder to be concise.
Yes, absolutely.
Aside from the differences in formatting between writing a script, which has a specific mechanical format, versus writing prose, which you've done a bunch of lately, what would you say are the biggest differences between creating a story for a novel versus a story for a screenplay?
Well, a story for a screenplay has to have a good deal more description. It creates the
A
world.
screenplay needs more description, or a novel needs more description?
There's more physical description in a novel
Definitely.
because you're also telling the interior story of the characters.
Well, that's right. And you have to describe the scenery, the background, the cost, the way people are dressed, and the way they move. You have to describe that more in detail in a novel.
Absolutely.
And do you find that more daunting or more fun?
It depends, In this one, in The Ride of a Lifetime, it was a bit more fun. Sometimes it's a bit daunting, though, because you're wondering if you created enough of a world. So, and that's sort of one of the things I'm dealing with right now in my third novel.
Well, I think in your first two, you had no trouble doing that. I think they're both very rich in what you're reading. You're getting a good image in your head as to what it is I think you're trying to say.
Oh, thank you. Bless you for saying that.
Well, I enjoyed reading both of your books. They're both easy to read. They're fun. They're smart. They're full of action, and I enjoyed them both thoroughly. As you've turned to writing novels, have you more or less at this point given up on your Hollywood dreams, or are you still thinking about that?
I would I think about it and I would pursue it if I thought it was realistic. But from what I hear about the business, unless you're pretty seriously connected, it's hard to get any kind of attention for myself in that business.
Well, it's been hard for a really long time, but now it's particularly hard.
Yeah, I look online. There are websites that are aimed at screenwriters, and all of them seem to be begging for money, so that they'll take money and connect you with a an agent or a development person.
Okay, so let's talk about that for a second. I think it's really important that you brought it up. It doesn't get mentioned on this show too often, but the truth is, anybody that wants to take your money to connect you in Hollywood, run away from. The only people that should ever take your money are agents or managers after you've been paid.
Yes.
Never upfront. Never, ever, ever upfront.
And, in that world that I was just describing, you're supposed to be approaching a manager who just has a little bit of experience as a development person.
Mm-hmm.
And so how do you know their bona fides are really real or worth taking seriously?
Well, sometimes it's helpful if you can look around on the internet for them. Today, when I was first starting in the business 180 years ago, there was no internet, so you really were taking a chance. I think that it's okay to pay someone who is a known entity who can give you feedback, like a coach. That's okay, but that person's not in the business of connecting you into Hollywood. Anybody that says, give me your money and I'll get you to whoever, to a producer, director, a manager, an agent, whatever, run away from that person. They're just taking your money.
Good advice.
I believe it is good advice. So you seem to gravitate toward, at least the two books I've read, toward action stories, thrillers. They're both thrillers, very different genres of storytelling, but they're both thrillers. Where does your passion for those kinds of stories come from?
Just as an audience member, that's the kind of story I like.
What is it about them that you like? What is it you like about them?
There is a sense of risk. There are real physical stakes. And I don't know whether I mentioned this to you the last time we spoke, but the French thrillers of the 1950s that are sort of like clockwork capers really appealed to me.
When you say clockwork, you're talking about they have a certain ticking clock in them.
Yeah, I did. In fact, I wouldn't have thought it was possible. In The Uniform, my first book, I used a lot of that thriller convention,
Oh,
where
definitely.
he's trying to put together this plan to escape a barn.
And he's trying not to get killed.
Yes, absolutely.
And so, yeah, anytime you can add that kind of pressure, especially in a screenplay, I think that's usually a pretty good thing. It's not true for every story, but most stories can use that extra pressure of time.
Yes, yeah. In fact, the Apollo 13 movie.
Yes, sure.
Had one of those sequences that I just loved it for that.
Well, talk about almost dying. That's
Yeah.
That's really up against it. You're out in space and there's no one really to help you other than what you can get from the people at NASA. Yeah, that was a thriller based on a true story, which I think was wonderfully done. So what kind of thriller stories, what kind of thriller writers or movies or books do you read that give you inspiration? Who do you admire?
These days I don't have time to read. If I want to read, I'll get an audiobook.
Well, okay, but you're still even if it's an audiobook, you're at least hearing the story.
Oh, yes. Yes.
So what kind of books do you read or listen to?
Well, I have my friend Harris Orkin.
Yes, who's been on the show.
The spy humor novelist.
Fantastic.
Yeah. He's great fun to read. And that's, I'm not sure, I haven't read much lately because I've been so invested in developing this third novel.
So when you go to movies or watch movies on TV or pull a DVD out, what do you tend to watch?
Actually, the most recent book that I read, now that you remind me, was Hail Mary.
Hail Mary, which became the movie.
Yeah, and it was a great. To me, it was a thriller.
Mm-hmm.
To me, it was a thriller, and you have a man who doesn't even know where he is. He has no. He has no access to tools and knowledge and that sort of thing until he begins to figure out where he is.
Well, so okay, so what for you then makes a good story good? To you when you are watching a movie or you're reading a book, what is it that keeps drawing you in?
A real problem. So, in the case of actually both of Andy Weir's movies and books, he presents a lone character with a very difficult problem. In The Martian, you got a guy there who's left on Mars without any of his support people, and it's all told very wittily. By the way, uh, he's a he's a narrator himself.
Mm-hmm.
And the same thing in Project Hail Mary, and it's sort of, and it's to me a unique way of telling a story, and I like it for that.
Do you think that stories are there to help us understand our world better?
I'm not sure if that's the case for all writers, but occasionally it is.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know that I sit down and say I'm going to help the world understand.
Those are two different things, Gabby. One is whether when we tell a story, whether we're intending to raise the world in some way, or whether by writing we do it even if we're not trying to.
Oh, in that case, now that you mention, I think that really is the intention.
I think that's what I was trying to get from you, which I think you agree with.
Yeah, you're characterizing the world. You're creating a vessel of understanding for readers and for viewers.
That's right. And by developing characters, it helps us to understand ourselves. If you're a good writer and you're an observant writer and you develop characters that are realistic, and that you put them in the cauldron of a difficult story, sometimes it helps us understand our own world.
It's true. It's true. When you started that question, I wasn't sure that I was in that category of writer.
I think you are, and I think Ride of a Lifetime does that as well. And so let's go through a bit of your writing process when you're starting a new story, like when you're working on a new one now, but when you were doing Ride of a Lifetime or The Uniform. What do you usually do? Do you sit down and work on character first or plot? What do you tend to look at first?
I think I do plot first.
Plot.
And it depends on who my characters are in the beginning. I mean, I knew in The Uniform that the main character was a labor camp prisoner.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of steered me in a certain direction.
And a doctor.
And a doctor, and who was he up against, that sort of thing. And as the story unfolded, it made things more interesting for me. I mean, the connection to a horse.
The horse is very important in that story.
Very, very.
Oh, as you're writing, as you're conjuring up your tales and your characters, are you thinking about the audience and how they'll receive it, or are you only writing to please yourself?
I think to myself. I mean, I would like to know that I was connecting with an audience. I think maybe I wasn't worried about it that much in The Uniform, but I think maybe in The Ride of a Lifetime, it's a little bit more intentional because it's a more modern story. And I'm curious how a story like that, that's so conversational and so profane, how that's going to land with people.
Well, it's a modern noir. It harks back to a lot of great thriller detective writers, basically, crime writers, really.
Yeah.
Do you have a particular methodology that you use for developing your characters? Do you sit down and do studies on them, or how do you come up with the characters you do?
I don't, but after I create a character, then I'll go a little bit deeper. For instance, in The Ride of a Lifetime, knowing that my main character is this sort of part-time gangster, I sort of leaned on people that I knew growing up who were, sort of like troubled spirits.
You knew gangsters as you were growing up?
I knew people that would grow up to become gangsters.
Really?
Yeah, yeah. People who would just for fun start fights.
Just for fun?
Yeah, yeah. In fact, I think I was at the receiving end of some of them.
You
Yeah.
you had fights picked with you?
Yes, I had. I wasn't ready for it, but I've had people come up to me on the street and just punch me out.
Really?
Yeah,
With no provocation at all?
none.
Well, I guess I can happily say that's knock wood never happened to me.
Yeah, that's Detroit for you.
I guess that is.
There were scary people there.
Well, and is that where most of the inspiration for the characters in The Ride of a Lifetime come from?
I think so.
Are any of them based on people you knew? You don't have to name names. I'm just wondering if any of them are based on people you knew.
I think Billy Pearl is based on people that I knew. I tweaked him a little bit to modernize. I mean, to make him a little bit more acceptable. I there
In what
were
way? How did you tweak him?
well, I made him a veteran of the Israeli army.
Mm-hmm.
The people I knew growing up were not likely to do that sort of thing.
Let's tell the listeners what Ride of a Lifetime is about. Tell us what the story is.
It's about a part-time gangster in Detroit who used to be a Windows I don't know what you call it, Windows accessory salesman, and he and his boss is a sort of criminal entrepreneur, and the boss assigns him a job of watching one of his own workers, and the character's name is Billy Pearl, and he starts watching the guy and ends up getting drawn into the target's life, and so that he's not totally in control of things. He is and gets involved in the guy's. Oh, so the target is a mechanic, and the mechanic is there to fix his GTO.
So you're talking about a car mechanic, not a mechanic in the sense of somebody who's an assassin.
Yes, yes, a car mechanic, and he makes the GTO sort of a character, a unique character in the story, sort of the way the horse was. I mean, I hadn't really seen the parallels before, but this is a guy, Billy Pearl, who never had a pot to piss in, and all of a sudden he has something that is worth a great deal to a lot of people.
What kind of a car is it? It's a GTO, right?
It's a 1970 GTO, the Judge.
The Judge.
So it's a very high performance car, and there's a fair amount of narration in the story about what that means.
Yes, there is, and it's canary yellow, if I remember correct.
Yeah, it is.
And the car itself goes through a whole bunch of stuff throughout the story.
Oh, it does. Yeah, it starts out as a rusted old clunker, and it becomes a valuable collectible, and that makes Billy a target.
Yes, it does, and he's a really well developed character, and clearly, I think you could translate him to the screen quite easily. We've seen lots of movies in this genre, but not with this unique take. And I'm just curious, there have been hundreds or thousands of crime stories written and produced, and I'm just wondering why you decided you wanted to write this one.
First of all, it's a Detroit story, and I grew up in Detroit, where the cold was a constant presence, and it was a challenge to get through every day. And I thought that it was a kind of a fun way to show the car managing, just getting around on the streets and getting Billy from place to place.
And the people walking down the street, they're all slipping and sliding every which way.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I'm in Pittsburgh, and we get our harsh winters. I think yours are probably a little harsher in Detroit.
A little bit, yeah.
But nevertheless, we run into the same problems where there's ice on the roads and snow, and it's cold. So when you were developing this, what did you spend most of your time on in developing it? I know you say you'd like to write plot first, but did you wind up spending a lot of time developing the characters and the action as well?
Oh, yeah. because, I mean, there were a bunch of really interesting, challenging characters. I mean, in addition to Billy, there's his foil, the mechanic, Lenny, and Lenny's wife, who was like a former affair of Billy.
Mm-hmm.
There's Billy's comedian girlfriend, and they all present Billy with the really interesting moral challenges as well.
In what way? What kind of moral challenges?
So Lenny's wife, Billy has to decide whether he wants to engage with her sexually. There's Sandy, the comedian, who is after Billy to have him finance her career and move her to LA.
She turns him into her manager,
Yeah,
which is actually hilarious that you've got a part-time criminal turns
Yeah.
into a comedian's manager.
and there's all that, just the question of personal loyalty. You know, is he going to have a sexual affair with Sandy, the comedian? Because it starts out not that way. In fact, he thinks she's a lesbian,
Mhm.
and he says, and she says something that he annoyed her with, and she mentions it, and he says, "How do I know what lesbians find funny?" That sort of thing. He didn't mean to offend her, but just in the course of having a conversation, that stuff comes out.
He's a great sexually attractive character. He is attractive to women in the story, and he's very sort of, I would say, laissez-faire about it. He just goes with the flow a lot,
Yeah.
and I think that's what makes him kind of cool and very interesting at the same time, because he's a player.
I mean, he doesn't intend to be, but things sort of come to him like that.
I don't think he thinks about it. He's just living life,
Yeah.
and he's a natural at it.
Yeah. He is. He is.
So this story is filled from beginning to end with nonstop conflict. He's in conflict all the time. There's always something going on that makes his life difficult. Are you conscious as you're writing and developing the story to infuse conflict that much into it?
I do try. It depends on what stage of writing this that you're asking about. In the beginning, I wasn't sure that I had that much conflict, but the more I wrote, the more it seemed like I needed it.
Well, I think that's what makes great storytelling great, is that it's filled with conflict. In fact, last time we talked on this show, we talked about your coursework at UCLA with Hal Ackerman, who I was also a student of and still know quite well. In fact, Hal's been on this show twice, and he's a big-time proponent of conflict, as well as everyone that teaches at UCLA.
Yeah, he is.
So I think you're very good at it. I don't think there's barely a breath in your storytelling that isn't filled with conflict.
Oh, that's cool. Thank you.
Yeah. And I want to go back a half a step to your comedy writing, because this has levity in it. It has some very funny stuff in it, though it's quite dark. Would you say that comedy must be infused with conflict as well?
I think so. You're setting something up and you're paying it off in a short time in comedy. Maybe in a screenplay or in a novel, you don't pay it off as quickly, but you're setting it up for an even bigger payoff later on.
The conflict itself is part of what I think makes a lot of comedy work.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
It's something rubbing against something.
Yeah, I mean, my favorite comedy in the last few years is Veep. Every second is full of conflict.
Every single second of that story, of that show, is filled with conflict. Yeah, that's a wonderful show. It's one of my favorite comedies of all time.
Yeah, great.
So you say you met and dealt with characters in your real life who inspired you for some of the people in this story. Was the story itself inspired by anything real that happened to you?
I don't think so.
So you made that up. That was all imaginative.
That was all imagined, yeah. I think it was an early screenplay of mine.
So you were developing this for movies and you turned it into a book.
Yes, I did, yeah.
I think you said you did that with the uniform as well, yeah?
Yes, absolutely.
Well, I think that that's a very good way to take a screenplay that you haven't sold and turn it into something if you think the story is valuable and worth telling.
Yep, yep. It's, it create you have this container with interesting events that, it'll work as a novel as well.
Indeed. So you write in the book, and I'm going to quote you, quote, Billy didn't stumble into his career, this survival mode, because he was a thrill seeker. He was a nothing seeker, too impatient to put the time into anything respectable. He struggled only to get from one dead moment to the next, a half-assed Zen version of living in the moment, close quote. Do you, I think that's quite brilliant and a wonderful way to describe someone. These are people, he's a person that you, if not an amalgam of people, he's like someone that you already know.
Absolutely.
That's wild.
Yeah, the people that I knew who lived in that world were nothing seekers.
Nothing seekers.
And I'm not sure that I had ever thought of that phrase before I sat down to write that paragraph, but
Well, that's called inspiration, right?
that was fun.
Where did you learn about Billy's quite brutal resourcefulness? Now, I know you grew up on the streets. Is that where you learned his brutal resourcefulness or elsewhere?
Yes, yes, that was where I learned about that. And then,
He's a
they're
tough
just
guy.
he's a tough guy. And then you have that little sequence where he goes to Israel to try and get in touch with his Jewishness. And that doesn't quite fit him either. But in fact, it's not the Jews in Israel that he connects to, but he connects to people who are just trying to get by.
Mm-hmm.
He sort of sees a simpatico with hustlers wherever they are.
Well, he's trying to find himself throughout the whole story.
Oh yes, yeah,
He really doesn't really know who he is, even though he's kind of laid back about all of it.
yeah.
He's not in panic mode most of the time. He's just doing.
He's not. But as I look at it, and I was asking myself questions about it, I remember that something that Hal Ackerman said to me, the idea, and it wasn't about this, it was something about something else, that a character was looking for a home. I think that's a big part of Billy. His connection, to Lenny and to Sandy, those are all, and forgive me, I don't remember Lenny's wife's name, but that's also a sort of a hunger for home.
Let's see. Her name is
Oh,
probably
Mary Alice.
Mary Alice. That's correct.
Mary Alice. In Detroit. So since the story is in many ways about Jews, growing up in Detroit, I went to Wayne State University downtown. I call it the Harvard of inner city Detroit. And
Harvard of inner city.
in that school, it seemed like all of the women were Catholics and their names were Mary. And I wanted to tip my hat to those women. It was their names were Mary or Catherine or Mary Alice or Mary Catherine, and that's the inspiration for Mary Alice in my book.
A lot of it's about guilt, isn't it?
Oh, I forget. Is it?
Well, I'm not your story. I'm talking about people who are either Jewish or Catholic. Both have a deep sense of guilt.
Oh, in that sense, yeah, yeah, it's interesting, and I think that that's what makes both groups interesting.
I agree
Sort
with
of
you.
it's an animating force.
So I'm not spoiling anything when I say this because it's early in the story. Where did you come up with the idea of smuggling birds in Detroit, of all places?
Oh, I did. I don't know where that came from, but I remember thinking that I didn't want it to be a garden variety crime. I thought I wanted to make it visually interesting, and the idea of birds in frozen Detroit struck me as a great sort of visual anti metaphor.
Well, it really is because it's so unexpected. You would not expect birds in the dead of winter in Detroit being smuggled or even moved around. I mean, because there would be no birds in the trees at that time. So they'd have to do something to take care of them and keep them warm and all the rest of it.
Yeah. And I remember patting myself on the back for that.
Well, and well done. Do you, I mean, when you came up with that, it was like sort of an immediate epiphany for you then?
Yeah, it was. It was. It's sort of like when you come up with that, you're ready to move on to the next 5 pages.
Exactly right. Well, so I'm going to quote you again. You write, "That's the way Billy contemplated his lawless life. Criminality was not a career choice as much as it was an accident. It was a kind of opportunity, like all the Germans who didn't subscribe to Nazism, but saw it as their path to riches." Are you saying that crime is something people can just fall into, not by choice?
Yeah, I do. I think that for people that aren't career oriented, you stumble into things.
Nothing seekers.
Nothing seekers. And I think Germans, I don't know if you saw this from the uniform, Germans were not necessarily virulent anti-Semites as much as they were just careerists, getting from one moment to the next.
Sure. They needed a job, and that was a job, and it turned into one of the most heinous jobs ever.
Yes, yes. In fact, if I may bring up my next book for a second.
Sure.
It's called After the War, and it's based on my mother's experience after World War II. She was an Auschwitz survivor, and she wants to go home to see who survived the war. And she finds a Nazi family living in her family's house. And the guy who is the head of the house is the city's orchestra conductor. So,
Wow. This is a true story?
yes.
That's wild.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. But my point is that, we have our preconceptions of who the bad guys are. I love the fact that we can take a guy who is like an art book lover or a symphony conductor, and those people can be just as horrible as gangsters.
Well, that's one of the most horrific parts about all of it. It's just ordinary people doing evil things.
Yes, yes.
They're caught up in it somehow. Well, some of that's in your story in both the uniform and in Ride of a Lifetime. People caught up in things like Billy Pearl is caught up.
Yep.
He doesn't set out to be that way. He just gets stuck in the grinder.
Yeah, exactly.
You're not, by the way, I think you're not equating Detroit hoodlums with Nazis, are you?
No, I'm not. But if you are not career oriented, whatever comes your way, if there's money in it or some form of an advancement, you let it happen. You push it. You see where it takes you.
That's true. Hopefully, it doesn't take you down a bad path.
No, I hope not.
Indeed. Well, lots of people have jobs their entire lives that they don't like, but they do it because they need the money.
Yeah.
And they do it for decades and retire on it, even though it's not really their heart and soul.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, compromise is a really interesting thing to explore. It really is. It really is a lot of times the thing that moves people the most.
Absolutely. Well, you got to survive. It's a survival instinct. And speaking of survival, we'll go back to Sandy here for a second. Sandy being Billy's girlfriend in the story, who she then wants him to manage and take her out to L.A. And she's a stand-up comedian. And I'm just wondering, that world from having written for comics. Have you ever done stand-up?
I have.
You've done it.
I've done it. I did it fairly recently, in fact.
Really?
I did it partially to see how well I could do, and I did okay, But I also, talking about my life, went up on the stage, and I carried my copy of the uniform on stage with me.
Always the salesman, huh?
Absolutely. Yeah.
You're going to push that product one way or another.
Yeah, you never know.
So why would Billy, in his circumstance, want to be her manager? What would his motivation be?
I don't think he wanted to. They were just in the comedy club. That he had a flat tire. He wandered into the comedy club. They ended up having a conversation, and a guy she didn't like was hustling her, but he wanted to promote himself as her manager, and she pointed at Billy and says, "He's my manager." And so Billy just went along with it.
Which he does all throughout the whole story. He just goes along to get along.
Yeah.
Even when it requires violence and mayhem, he's sort of still going along to get along.
Yeah. Yeah.
Would you say the book's main theme is survival and evading death? What do you think the main theme of the book is?
I think it's survival and what I just brought up, the idea of home, finding home in other people.
Mm-hmm.
That emotional connection is really important.
As you were working on the book, especially as you got into multiple drafts, could you tell that things were working for you? Could you feel it?
I did feel it. Yeah, I did feel it.
Mm-hmm.
That's why, the whole car thing just felt like a real natural thing for me.
Are you a car fanatic?
I'm not, but I'm interested in them. But I will tell you that my brother-in-law has a GTO, and I consulted with him
Mm-hmm.
about all things GTO. So half of the references in that story are, come from him or come from my research.
Would you call that your main research was on the cars, or did you research the hoodlums as well?
No, it's the cars. It was
The cars.
Yeah, I didn't feel like I needed to research the hoodlums. They came simple, easy.
That was already under the skin.
I guess so.
Well, they're and you did do them in a way where they're very dramatic and yet somehow amusing at the same time.
And they amused me at the time, as I was writing it.
Well, you can tell. I can tell now that I've read 2 of your books that I can tell when you're really into and amused by what you're writing. It comes off on the page.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that.
So what would you say was the biggest challenge in writing this book? What was the hardest thing to do?
Wow. The biggest challenge. Just getting this character who has very little ambition to go from place to place. He has other people kind of pull him along. There's Sandy, and there's Lenny, and there's Mary Alice, and they each present him with challenges that get him another 5 or 10 pages into the story, that get him really threatened, where it becomes a life and death kind of a story for him.
And ultimately, it works out okay for him, even though he goes through hell and back to get there.
Yeah.
And again, he's still, even as he gets to the end and things work out, he's still going along to get along, which I found amusing.
Yeah, right.
So am I correct that this is a self-published book?
It is.
And so as an ex-advertiser, what are you doing aside from being on a show like this? What are you doing, if anything, to promote your books? How are you promoting? You're going on stage as a stand-up comedian, bringing your books with you.
Yeah.
What else? What do you do?
So I've created a number of videos. I've hired people to create videos for me. I've created a few myself, put them on TikTok and YouTube. Not as much as I should, I fear, but
well, it's a very very difficult market to be in. There's something like 60 to 80,000 books a year published. So you're in that whirlwind, and you're trying to separate yourself somehow.
Yeah. So that's why that's why I want to get help. That's why I want to have an agent and a publisher.
You're looking for an agent now to work on the next book.
For the next book, yeah.
So if you were starting out as a writer today, I know you've been as a writer working at it for a long time, but not as a novelist. If you were, what would you say to those that are just trying to figure out whether they should be writing novels or not? Why do it?
See what works for you personally, what lines up with your skills. Just know it's going to take some time to become pretty good.
Would you say you're a disciplined writer?
I am. I'm, you know, I go to my coffee shop every day.
Oh, you write in a coffee shop.
I do. Yeah. I go to my coffee shop every day because I need to find out what's going to happen. I'm really into my next story as an audience member. So, and that's what I get out of the coffee shop experience. Well, there are people there that become your friends. I have coffee shop friends. And it just is sort of like a comfortable spot for you to lose yourself in a story. And that's what I'm always hoping for.
Are they other writers, or are they from all walks of life?
There are other writers there, but I'm not sure that I'm connecting with them.
So you're not pitching things to each other for feedback.
No.
When you're meeting people in the coffee shop, they're giving you an insight into life, into their lives.
Oh yeah. They're just other people. They're friends. They're there's a woman there who is an editor of sorts. I mean, we've never spoken a whole lot about my work, but it's just kind of nice to have that sort of literary friend. It's interesting. You see I find this encouraging. A lot of women come in there with a book.
That they're reading or writing?
Reading. A woman who came in there with a Doberman Pinscher, really a nice woman from Italy, and we developed a nice friendship. And I liked her dog and everything. And she never came back of this, but I told her she was my coffee shop wife. We just seemed to get along, but I think I may have overstepped.
Well, you have to be a little careful what you say to people in public, yeah?
Truly. I thought it was fairly innocent, but oh well.
So what do you do then to stay disciplined? Is it going to the shop? Is that what does it for you?
I do, and I think about it a lot. I've got my phone, and I use the Notes app so that whenever I have a thought that relates to my work, I can put it down without losing an important thing.
That is a very important thing that you've just said. I frequently ask people on this show, what do you do when you have a thought, what do you do to preserve it? Do you write it down on a piece of paper? Do you put it in your Notes app in your phone?
And another thing I do with my phone is, if you're wondering about AI, I will use AI for research. Like I will ask it what did the buildings look like in Prague in 1945?
Mm-hmm.
That sort of thing, so that I can create a clearer picture of that world.
And you're looking for actual images as well as perhaps some text about that.
Yes.
It's a lot easier than having to go to a library and dig it out by hand.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it really is.
I assume in your career, you've had to do multiple different assignments at the same time, especially in the world of advertising. How do you handle multiple different things at one time? How do you handle life and writing and other assignments and things like that? What do you do?
I'm not sure that I have a plan. I just kind of divide up my day. When I was writing screenplays, they would, sort of occupy the bigger part of my day. In those days, I also were doing advertising related stuff. I was doing what was called director's treatments, which is a way to sell ad agencies or studios on the vision of a director. I would ask the director, "How do you see these characters? What do they look like? How do they act? And how do they interact with the product?" Because a lot of this was advertising related.
Right.
But so I had to, and to tell you the truth, those then became the bigger part of my day. And I would, sort of move the screenwriting to the evening.
I'm going to bet that those interviews and ways that you pick people's brains actually helped you to think about how to write your own stuff.
Unquestionably. I didn't really know. I had a friend who was a commercial director, and a wonderful guy named Brent Thomas. And he was the guy who said, you really should try and do this. You might be able to make a living at it. And I made a little bit of a living with it, but I also appreciated it because I had to think of it. I had to think of the world of advertising as a world of images and characters and action. And how do you describe that to the guy who's paying you to do this?
So you had to be a good writer, even though you weren't writing a novel, you were writing a commercial.
That's right. And I had to talk about simplifying. You had to be really clear.
Super clear.
Yeah, because you wanted to grab other directors to kind of keep employing you. And I think I was pretty good at landing the job for the director.
Wow. So you must have been very popular if that's the way they looked at you.
I was pretty popular.
Yeah. Well, if you're helping people get work by making it clear for them, that's a very powerful thing.
Yeah. I'm not sure that there's a whole lot of work for those people anymore.
This is true for an awful lot of people in that business. Well, I've been having just the most wonderful conversation with Gabby Gruen, and he's the author of 2 books that I've read, The Uniform and The Ride of a Lifetime. And we're going to wind the show down a little bit right now. And I'm wondering, in all of your experiences, you've already given us an amusing offbeat story in the last episode, but I wonder if you have a unique story you can share with us that's either weird, quirky, offbeat, strange, or just plain funny that's more than what you have already said throughout the show.
This is just more related to The Ride of a Lifetime. And what was fun about this was that it tells you a little bit about the character, is that he had this GTO, the judge. He won it in a card game. That's the kind of guy he is. He acquired his transportation in card games.
Have you ever done that?
No, I was not, I'm not a great gambler. I'm a losing gambler. So
You would have lost your car if you'd gambled it.
I would have, I wrote something down about how I handle negative criticism, and I said it, and my thought was that it depends on who is giving it, the astuteness of the criticism, and whether it was good criticism. We talked about Hamlet versus Godzilla last time, and Hal Ackerman said to me, "It sounds like you just thought that up on the way in here." This was for my screenwriting class. And I did, and it sounds like nothing. It sounds like like it was worthless. But in 6 months or a year, I wrote a really fun screenplay, a kind of a great send-up of Shakespeare. So it depends on who says it, what they say, and how I like to take it, where I like to take that criticism. If it's good criticism and it makes you a better writer, so much the better.
Indeed. Well, so is that what will suffice for your piece of advice for today?
Yeah, criticism can be a real help. Not always, but if it's good, if it's helpful criticism, it's my advice.
Well, I think that's great to get feedback. We work in a lonely profession where you're by yourself a lot, and you don't always know whether what you're doing is valuable or not. It's good to get that feedback, isn't it?
It really is. I just started sending out drafts of my new novel, hoping to get some sort of feedback, because you never really know.
As I say, that's the one of the biggest dilemmas for, I think, most writers, is we don't know what we've written until somebody else tells us it's good or not.
Truly.
We get lost. As the old cliche is, we get lost in the forest for the trees. And it can be very difficult to know whether you have something that's worth publishing or making into a movie.
It truly is. It truly is. It's vital.
It is vital. It really is, that you get that kind of sort of confidence builder by having other people tell you, yeah, I got it. It's fun. It works. Or wait a minute, you've got a problem here. And that can then help you to get to the next place that it needs to be. Well, Gabby Gruen, this has been an absolutely wonderful episode of StoryBeat today. And I can't thank you enough again for your your time, your energy, and your wisdom. And, those of you that are interested in reading two fun books, check out The Uniform and The Ride of a Lifetime. Thank you so much for being on the show with me today, Gabby.
Thank you, Steve. It was a blast.
And so we've come to the end of today's Story Beat. If you like this episode, won't you please take a moment to give us a comment, rating, or review on whatever app or platform you're listening to. Your support helps us bring more great Story Beat episodes to you. StoryBeat is available on all major podcast apps and platforms, including Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, and many others. Until next time, I'm Steve Cuden, and may all your stories be unforgettable.